Doing so good to see you. Welcome, 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 welcome. Hi, everybody. Got the famous bookshelf in front of me. Good times sitting in front of the bookshelf, just like the good old days before the pandemic. Sipping water. It's late at night. It is Thursday night. I'm in my lovely Brooklyn apartment, in the living room in front of the bookshelf. So much that we can talk about. Glad you all are here. Thank you for waiting. I was a little bit more delayed in starting than I had intended. But here we are. So the way this works is I give my opening remarks. And then after I give my opening remarks, from there, after I've given my opening remarks, then I do the roll call where I call you all out as I see you, your names, your locations. We find out who all is here. And then after that, I answer your super chat questions. I just got the first one about zapatistas. So I answer your super chat questions. And that's how it works. So that's how we're going to do things here tonight. So I wanted to open tonight by I wanted to talk about this from a couple different angles, but it's something that's been very interesting to me. Socialist patriotism. Discourse. Something that's been very interesting to me, I must say, and here we'll make John Brown Volunteers a moderator, since they are the John Brown Volunteers. There is a particular, I don't know if you want to call it a conspiracy theory. Right. In Taiwan. There's a particular theme that you will see. And people on the left will talk about it. People on the right will talk about it. Fidel Castro talked about it in one of his columns, which I've quoted. It's quoted in We Are City Builders and City Builders and Vandals. It's a certain phrase that comes up a lot. And it's one of those phrases where it points to how important nuance can be. It's actually a word. It's just a word that gets used a lot. And I want to talk about that word, what it means, what it doesn't mean, and show you this is I guess you could call this a segment of dissecting discourse, because there are true things, there are unproven things, there are completely untrue things, and then there are narratives and interpretations. And there's many layers with this. But the way it's generally discussed is a light switch effect. And that's not fair, because when you dig into these things are more complicated than that. And that word is a word that maybe you haven't heard. Most people have not heard it. It's a little bit obscure, but if you're in the world of internet conspiracy theories and such, you may have heard this word before. But if you haven't, that's okay. But discussing this word and what it means, what it doesn't mean, this is me dissecting discourse, because there's a lot here. And that word is tavistock. 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 Now, what is this word? What does this mean? Well, there is something called the Tavistock Institute for Human Relations. And it exists. And it is basically a center that does psychological research. And it exists. But there is a huge amount written about it. And the way it's generally discussed is a light switch effect. They basically say if you talk at all about Tavistock, then you're a crazy conspiracy theorist who's saying all of these things. They then attribute all kinds of statements to you that you never said. And that's something that is not right. Okay, so the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations It was set up during the Second World War as a propaganda research center where they were researching propaganda because there was a war going on, and the Nazis, they had their propaganda and their broadcast. The British were fighting the Nazis. They were trying to develop their own propaganda. No one denies this. It received government funding, and it received private funding as well. It was a psychological research center run by MI5, MI6. That's what it was. And it existed. And after the Second World War, it mainly started working with the private sector in marketing and advertising. And that's the Tavistock Institute. It's a real organization. It really exists. Now, the question is, what impact has it had? Now, the Tavistock Institute is generally linked to the Beatles, right? The Beatles music, the music of the Beatles, the British invasion, they called it, when it was rock and roll groups from Britain coming to the United States. Usually they point to marketing research done by the Tavistock Institute as having had, an influence on the Beatles and the marketability of the Beatles, the music the Beatles made, the sound. That's again, none of this is hard to believe. None of this is hard to believe. In fact, it makes perfect sense that if you're a big record company, you'd want to sell lots of albums, no? So you would do all kinds of marketing research to find out what sounds and what music impacts your audience in a psychological way, right? Furthermore, a psychological research center that does private research might be useful in you to determining this. Nothing like this is crazy. Nothing like this is crazy. And the fact that the Tavistock Institute did research for British intelligence as well as research for private companies and marketing companies, again, not surprising. None of this is crazy. None of this is crazy, right? The Tavistock Institute clearly exists. They clearly did research for intelligence, for British intelligence. They clearly also did research for the private sector, and it seems very possible, and it seems very likely, and it seems to be somewhat documented that Beatles music and the marketability of the Beatles music was a result of mass marketing research that was done at the Tavistock Institute. Nothing in what I just said is a crazy conspiracy theory. It all makes perfect sense. But there's some other things to throw in. There's some other things to throw into the hopper, right? One thing to throw into hopper is someone who was also doing psychological research, not at the Tavistock Institute, but also doing psychological research at the time, was William Sargent. And he was the author of these two books, The Mind Possessed and The Battle for the Mind. And William Sargent was a British psychologist who was working with British intelligence to publish these two books about his research into mind control and brainwashing. And if you read about William Sargent, this famous British psychologist who was working with MI6 and British intelligence to engage in psychological research, how to control people, wrote these two books on it, that were widely circulated during the 1960s. If you look into William Sargent, again, public record, he was not a very nice man. People died as a result of his research. And he kept people asleep for months with drugs. He tried to do all kinds of mind control experiments on people. A lot of people really suffered. You can listen to BBC radio programs exposing the atrocities that William Sargent committed in his psychological research in Britain and in Canada. That he carried out during the Cold War period. Again, all very well documented. Nothing extreme or crazy there. And the fact that British intelligence during the 1950s and 60s was doing all kinds of experiments in mind control, which our U.S. CIA was doing as well. They called it Project MKUltra. The fact that that there was a private public institute called the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations that conducted some of this research, and that Some of the marketing of the Beatles may have, been a result of research done at the Tavistock Institute. That's not shocking. Now, also, there's an individual who's very key in what we call the synthetic left. And that individual's name is Theodore Adorno, right? You may have heard of him. He's an important new left scholar, right? He wrote The Authoritarian Personality. He's that whole redefinition of fascism, where fascism becomes mass movements and conformity. The Susan Sontag, Hannah Arendt, new left, synthetic left definition of fascism. One of the people who contributed to it greatly was Theodore Adorno. And Theodore Adorno, he cites the research of the crackpot Wilhelm Reich. And Theodore Adorno is in Marxist academia, in that academic field. He's widely respected. Well, a number of the people he did his research with for the book The Authoritarian Personality, among other things, were people who'd worked at the Tavistock Institute, right? The Tavistock Institute of Human Relations. None of this is tinfoil hat, what I'm telling you now, right? Now, there are people who take what I just said here and say things that are not true. Theodore Adorno did not write, I think there's someone who claims that Theodore Adorno wrote the Beatles' music. Well, there's no way to document that. That's not proven. There are people who claim that Beatles music was intentionally brainwashing, to try and control the minds of the American public. And that's not true. That's not documented. What is documented is the Tavistock Institute existed, that American and British intelligence were doing all kinds of research into mind control and brainwashing at the time, and that some of this mass marketing and psychology research was used to market the Beatles in the United States. None of that is disputed. But the way they want you to think about this generally is, most people have never heard the phrase Tavistock. But if you say Tavistock, then people say you're discredited. And it's like, no, you're not discredited. Fidel Castro was not discredited. Fidel Castro published an article that talked about this, and it talked about the Tavistock Institute and their psychological research and how that combined with Project MKUltra, and that there were covert efforts to try and manipulate the U.S. public during the 1960s, and a lot of that had to do with kind of fomenting the hippie counterculture. The hippie counterculture didn't arise out of nowhere. The hippie counterculture was largely the result of meddling in U.S. politics by intelligence agencies, primarily the U.S. CIA with MKUltra. They were distributing drugs. And it was also the result of manipulation of U.S. culture by British intelligence. Again, none of this is tinfoil hatty at all, right? None of this is tinfoil hat whatsoever, right? I mean, Carl Rogers, probably the most famous post-World War II psychologist in the United States. Carl Rogers, Google Carl Rogers, CIA, and it comes up that his career began as he participated in psychological research into brainwashing and mind control with the CIA. Carl Rogers, the most famous post-World War II psychologist of the United States. Again, not tinfoil hat. Go read The Search for the Manchurian Candidate, a very important book. Luna being anti-American. All right. And none of what I'm telling you is controversial. None of what I'm telling you is, but it's when people take that and run a mile with it, then you have a problem. And that's the thing, right? Beatles music was very, very mass marketable. Watch the films, from that period, the Beatlemania, where those crowds of young women are screaming for the Beatles and fainting and all of that. Again, there was a mass marketing effort for the Beatles that resulted, favorite Beatles track. All right, that resulted in making the Beatles much more popular than other music and kind of creating a mass movement around that. Again, nothing tinfoil hat here at all. Nothing tinfoil hat about what I'm saying. But it's that light switch effect where they say, okay, well, you can't talk about any of this at all. Or if you do, people immediately put you in this category of people who think all kinds of crazy things. And I mean, it's interesting to dig into this stuff. It's very interesting to dig into this stuff. Very interesting to dig into this kind of thing, right? Because there's a lot there. There has been a lot of effort by American intelligence, by British intelligence, to kind of craft public discourse, and that this is one aspect of the way what you can call the synthetic left, the woke left, emerged to replace Marxism, right? The Communist Party of the United States, William Z. Foster, Gus Hall, Paul Robeson, Elizabeth Gurley Flynn. I mean, this was genuine Marxism. But there is another entity that has emerged, and that entity is not genuine Marxism. And that entity is causing all kinds of political confusion. And we're facing a political mess right now in the United States. We're facing a political mess because of the fact that so many people who should be becoming progressive and left-wing are becoming right-wing. And they're becoming right-wing because the left has basically turned its back on the working class. The left has declared that all populism is fascist. The left has declared that its desire is only to tear things down and not to build something new. The left is only about destruction and deconstruction. It's not about progress and building things. And as a result, a lot of people that they look at the left as this terrifying mob of people who want to destroy them and want to tear them down and are hostile and negative, and they look the other way. And that is a concern, right? So those of us who are trying to say we need a real working class left, a real working class movement that would fight for jobs and education and health care and would try to move the country, we ought to be able to have a conversation about the synthetic left. And William Sargent, The Mind Possessed, the Tavistock Institute, we don't really know very much about it. But what we do know about it is enough to know that that's one part of the picture. Another part of it is the Congress for Cultural Freedom program. And that was a program where the CIA was funneling money to pseudo-leftist groups. Partisan Review magazine, Encounter, Dare Monat, various magazines that were promoting like left-wing viewpoints, promoting the writings of Theodore Adorno and Susan Sontag and Irving Howe. They were covertly funded by the CIA, and they were pushing what sounded like a socialist, anti-war, anti-imperialist critique of the United States, but was actually a Trotskyite manipulation. That was a part of it. And reinventing leftism to be about nonconformity and reinventing the definition of fascism, moving away from the scientific definition of fascism towards the definition of fascism as just whenever people are in groups and, working together to achieve a common aim or something like that. That was part of it. The CIA's work with Eastern mystical cults. You can't go around in Manhattan practically at all without seeing the Falun Gong, right? The Falun Gong is this dangerous religious cult that is trying to overthrow the Chinese government. But the U.S. government has harbored them and built them up, and they're everywhere in New York City. But this isn't the first one, right? The U.S. government built up the Tibet separatist movement and the Dalai Lama. The U.S. government has backed and built up the Unification Church and the Moonies in South Korea. And there's even a quote from John Foster Dulles, the founder of the CIA, about using Eastern religions against communism. And the Eastern religions were a big part of the hippie counterculture. The Hare Krishna movement, for example, which was promoted by the Beatles. George Harrison was their primary promoter. George Harrison of the Beatles, he recorded a whole album. All of his albums practically have Hare Krishna chants in them. The Hare Krishna movement, Tibet separatism, Falun Gong, these Eastern mystical religious cults that were against the Chinese Communist Party have been promoted by the American government, and that Eastern mysticism and the kind of glorification of feudalism that a lot of these groups promote, a lot of that was a big part of hippie counterculture. Just like drugs, we talk about Project MK Ultra. They were distributing drugs throughout the college campuses. That they were distributing acid, LSD, throughout the United States. They were doing acid research on college campuses, giving drugs to people. You read about Project MK Ultra. None of this is an exaggeration. So when we talk about the synthetic left, right, and that this is the dangerous thing, because this is all public record now. Right? In the 1970s, they had the Church Committee, the Congressional Church Committee, that investigated the FBI and the CIA and revealed all of this. This is public record, right? That Project MK Ultra, they were distributing drugs throughout the United States. Congress for Cultural Freedom, they were funding fake socialist and fake left-wing magazines. What's the other one? Now we know about the Tavistock Institute that was doing marketing research, covert work with Theodore Adorno, William Sargent and his psychological research experiments. This stuff has gone on. And that the 1960s counterculture that developed, the new left, is very much a product of American intelligence. And it's a product of British intelligence. And that this is not Marxism. And we shouldn't be afraid to have that conversation. We shouldn't be ashamed to have that conversation. And we desperately need to have that conversation, because something is deeply, deeply wrong in the United States right now. Something is deeply, deeply wrong. It's wrong in our culture. I mean, there's a huge amount of pessimism. People don't have hope. There's drug addiction. There's, suicides are going on. People don't have hope. Meanwhile, there is the absence of genuine Marxism. People don't know what Marxism is. People think Marxism is just worker cooperatives. People think anyone who wants, a state central plan is a fascist or something like that. There's a problem here. So as we talk about the synthetic left versus the real left, as we talk about this, we should be able to talk about these things. And again, a lot of what you'll find when you look for the word tavistock is things that are not proven. But there are some things that have been proven. Just like there are things that have been proven about Project MK Ultra. Just like there are things that have been proven about the Congress for Cultural Freedom. You have to talk about these things, and we have to avoid that light switch effect where it's either in crazy land or it's 100% true. We have to avoid that. We really have to avoid that when we talk about this, because there has been a real distortion of our movement. Marxism is about economic growth and progress. Marxism looks at human beings. It says we've gone from hunter-gatherers in the woods to feudalism to capitalism, and next we can go to socialism. Socialism is the next stage. And socialism will bring a higher level of material abundance. Socialism will eliminate the chaos of the market, the anarchy of production, and lead us to a higher state of material abundance, giving way to the final stage of communism, a society with so much material abundance, so much wealth existing that the need for the state can fade away, from each according to their own ability to each according to their needs. That Marxism is a fundamentally optimistic ideology that seeks to have society take control of the means of production and organize them to serve public good and not the profits of a few. It wants to liberate the means of production from the irrational profit motive, organize them rationally for the benefit of society, have society as a whole, led by the working class, the broad majority of us who sell our labor power to survive, take control of the means of production, and have the means of production then organized rationally to serve public goods so that the rule of profits can be eliminated. That's what Marxism is about. Marxism says we don't just live in ordinary capitalism. We live in a period of imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism, where big banks and corporations dominate the global economy, holding back economic development. They're keeping the world poor so that they can stay rich. They actively underdevelop. There's a book called How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, and Walter Rodney shows in detail how big monopolies and banks in Britain and the United States and elsewhere have worked very, very hard to make sure that Africa remains poor so it can be dominated by Western monopolies. Imperialism is the rule of big corporations and banks over the world, and it's holding back economic development. And right now, it's undeveloping. It's de-developing the Western centers, right? It's grinding the whole world into poverty, right? They're grinding the whole world into poverty, reducing, trying to drive down living standards across the planet. That's what's happening in the period that we are living in. And imperialism is in decline. And what is needed more than ever is to move toward a rational socialist economy, right? Where growth can proceed and countries can trade with each other on the basis of win-win cooperation. This is Marxism. Marxism is about economics. Marxism is not a cultural critique. It's not waging war against people in Middle America who aren't woke enough. It's not the government controlling everyone's life. Marxism is having a rationally planned economy, and that is what all of this is, and that is noticeably absent from U.S. discourse. People don't talk this way anymore. You have the left, the synthetic left, that wants to tear people down, that focuses on destruction, that is pessimistic and looking backward, has a primitivist outlook. And then you have the right, which focuses on individualism. Everyone for themselves, compassion is a form of weakness. Human solidarity must be gotten rid of. Free markets, greed is good. That's the right, right? It's the right. The right tends to glorify capitalism. The left tends to focus on cultural pessimism. But no one is bringing forward the basic message of socialism, that the banks and the factories and the major industries should be organized to serve public good, not the profits of a few. That we need a government of action that will fight for working families. No, this message is not really being brought forward. So go and research about the Tavistock Institute. Go and read about it, right? This is real, and it's one piece of the wider puzzle. Right, I'm posting the Saxton lectures. There's one Saxton lecture. What is the one thing all communists must agree on? I'm posting the Saxton lectures. And I'm posting the Saxton lectures online, and those are presentations that were given. It was classes that were held in Saxton, Pennsylvania, a couple months ago. They're going up online. And, the first one, there's 8 parts. 7 of them are posted. So there's only one that is remaining to be posted, and then they're all up there. But we've got a website, thesaxtonlectures.com. We're going to really try to promote these lectures because they give insights into Marxism that you won't find other places. They give an explanation of what it is we believe, and again, actual Marxism is absent from the discourse. And so I feel like we kind of have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to bring it out there. So yeah, it's late. I'm tired, but I just wanted to, talk about that. The last Saxton lecture should be up soon. I'm glad that we're on here having a nice little chat. I don't have a huge, long spiel for you all tonight. I did want to hop on here and talk to you all. But so why don't we do our roll call, and then I'll just start answering your super chat questions, and then we'll be done. It's a little after midnight. It's about 5 after midnight. So why don't we do the roll call? I'll call you out as I see you, names and locations. Cleveland Pirate Alex, Calgary, Canada. Nate in Chicago. Arturo in Alaska. Zach from Richmond, Virginia. Elias from Wisconsin. Who else is with us tonight? Ash in Chicago. Clydebank, Illinois. Tulare, Duluth, Mindanao to Midwest, Travis in Humboldt, Mobile, Alabama, Gerard in Idaho, Danny from Illinois, St. David's, Bermuda, Vicksburg, Mississippi, Fred from Alameda County, Tushar, Gotti, Christian from North New Jersey, Quenzo City, Los Angeles County, Alex from Milwaukee, Cincinnati, Sam in Chicago, Keaton in New Jersey, Jenny Lynn in Cincinnati, hi from Australia. John McCarthy, Chicago. Jason in Georgia, New Hampshire. John Brown volunteers at home base at NYC. Shout out to you guys. Chris in Philly. Auckland, New Zealand. Ben in Denver. Edmonton in Alberta. Justin in Kiama, Australia. Ukiah, Montgomery, Alabama. Little Falls, New Jersey. Richie in Staten Island. Shout out to you, Richie, Northern Michigan. Leo, Mimi from Mexico. Leo and Mimi from Mexico. Grand Junction, Springfield, Missouri. Pomona, California. Noah from Ohio. Shout out to you, Noah. Seattle. Baron in Seattle. Welcome, Baron. Anybody else want me to call them out as I see them, names and locations? Then we'll just answer the super chats. We'll just start answering super chat questions. Ed from Texas, Ventura, California, Mikey in Montana. Good stuff, folks. All right. The first super chat question is about the Zapatistas. The Zapatistas, John in Houston. I want to give everyone their shout out, right? But the first question is about the Zapatistas. So the Zapatistas are an indigenous group located in Chiapas, which is a region in Mexico, and they are an indigenous group that is inspired by Marxism, and they're anti-globalization, anti-imperialist, and they are eclectic, right? Some of their stuff is very anarchist in its orientation. Some of their stuff is very almost Marxist-Leninist or communist in its orientation. Some of their stuff is more from the indigenous tradition. They are a leftist grouping in Mexico that fights for the rights of certain indigenous groups in Chiapas, and I believe they do want ultimately the separation of Chiapas and territorial control. It's a political grouping in Mexico that's been around for a while, again, their ideology is very eclectic. They present themselves as anarchists sometimes. Other times they present themselves more as communists. Other times they present themselves as more of an indigenous cultural group. But they are, they're a political movement in Mexico. They're not as big as they once were. They were at one time very, very large. I mean, they still have a lot of influence, but there's also a much bigger and broader left in Mexico now than there used to be, right? In Mexico now, I mean, the current president, is in a coalition, Morena, that includes the biggest communist party, the Labor Party, the PT of Mexico, which is a formerly Hojist, now just kind of a mainstream communist party in Mexico that has seats in the parliament and stuff. There's a lot of pro-Bolivarian sentiment in Mexico. So Mexico's politics have kind of evolved, and now there is a broader left in Mexico. But the Zapatistas are still there, and there are differences between them and the more pro-Bolivarian forces in Mexico, certainly. But there you go. During the socialist patriotism discourses, and this is the next super chat question I've got here. During the socialist patriotism discourse, what is your valuable takeaway? I don't know. I mean, my valuable takeaway is that it seems like, I'm trying to find the right words, but it actually, so many of these arguments, people don't want to actually find common ground. Right? I was arguing with this doofus on Twitter earlier tonight, right? And he's arguing with me about land back. And he's attacking me. He's like, you don't want self-determination for indigenous people. And I said, no, I've always been clear that I do advocate self-determination for indigenous people, and I do advocate reparations. In a socialist United States, obviously, if indigenous groups wanted to break away from the United States, I would support that, and reparations, obviously. But they have the right to determine whether they want to separate or integrate for themselves, just like the Black Belt, just like the Sun Belt, the Chicano people, the Old Southwest, Aztlan. Just like any oppressed grouping, they have the right to, determine their own destiny. And that's what decolonization actually means, by the way. And so this person says, oh, well, if that's what you agree, then you don't disagree with land back. Oh, well, then why did this person spend 2 days arguing with me? And why is he still performatively attacking me? If you are generally advocating something and you find out someone else agrees with it, Why would you attack them? But it seems like the desire is not to find common ground. The desire is to disagree with someone and do so in a way that wins you performative points, right? It's, and I've noticed that when you argue with people about land back, the definition of land back changes constantly. Sometimes land back means that every white person must leave the United States, as Jason Unruhe says, right? We're all Euro settlers. You're not allowed to advocate proletarian patriotism. You can't advocate a socialist program because it's on stolen. Land back means that, what I've said that I agree with, which is, territorial sovereignty, self-determination if they want it, reparations, etc. Okay, fine. Sometimes land back means it's this program that Jeff Bezos has donated millions of dollars to support that's about privatizing public land and stratifying the indigenous community and expanding the gap between rich and poor in the indigenous community. No one can clearly state what land back really means. But what is consistent is that if you don't immediately support it, you're wrong. You're racist. And it's like they don't want you to agree with it, right? They don't want you to actually agree with it. They want you to disagree with it so that they can be self-righteous. And they don't actually want it to be implemented. They want to just look very self-righteous to everyone for being against it, for being, in favor of it, right? And so the more outrageous it is, they don't ever, the whole thing is crazy. The whole thing is just crazy. Right? In real politics, you want to mobilize as broad a group of people as possible. You want to find something that broad group of people can agree with and work together to achieve their common aim around. That's not what people want. And the patriotism debate is a great example of that, right? A lot of people in the United States think that we want to make their lives worse. Communism in the United States, people generally, the reason that Trump and all of them tell everyone, all the liberals, Biden's a communist, is because most people in the United States have been led to believe that the left and communists want to make their lives worse. So it is our job, if we want to convince the people of the United States to be in favor of socialism, it's our job to show them that no, socialism will make their life better. And so one way of explaining that is pointing out that we love the country. We don't want to destroy the country. We don't want people here to be worse off. We believe that socialism, dismantling imperialism, moving towards socialism will make the country better, and that it is patriotic to be a socialist. This just seems like common sense, right? Communists in Brazil don't run for office on a platform of fuck Brazil, I want to destroy Brazil. No, now obviously we want to correct injustices. We want to, but I've noticed that, this is winning, right? This is getting people to understand that you're on their side, and you're trying to actually see things get better. But that's not what it's about. Again, it's not about getting people to agree with you. It's about disagreeing with people and looking so righteous and performative about it. It's all this performative politics. The second you say proletarian patriotism, you get this performative, I hate this country, America is racist and genocide. And it's performative, right? They're not trying to actually appeal to anybody. They just want everyone to look in awe and look how revolutionary they are. And it's childish, right? It doesn't occur to these people that we could actually ever win anything. It doesn't occur to these people that we could actually see socialism in the United States. And it doesn't occur to, same with land back. Some of these people, I don't think they even really want land back. They just want to look at really, woke to all of their friends. I'm for deporting every white person from this country. Oh, you're only for partial land back. I'm for all of land. It's this stupid performative politics that again, they're not actually interested in achieving anything. It's that people have learned that you can get points with the mob by tearing other people down. And that's it, right? That if you find somebody somewhere who's doing something wrong, or if you can find someone somewhere that is not as woke as you are, you can perform by calling them out and making yourself look so much better. And that's all this is, right? They're not actually trying they're not actually trying to come up with anything that could ever be implemented. They're not trying to build any real organizations. They're not trying to, it's just performance. It's just, they want to look so woke, and it's shallow. And it's just performance, right? And so talking to these people about proletarian patriotism, I debated, Jason Unruhe about socialist billionaires, and he looked like a doofus. At one point in that debate, he tried to say that, they'd had full communism during the Cultural Revolution, and then I read to him Marx's definition of full communism, and he backed away from that, and then he basically admitted I was right, and then it just turned into, well, growth can't be unlimited. There can't be hope, Caleb. Yeah, there can't be hope. And I'm like, Jason, like, obviously, there is a material world, but human beings do advance. We keep growing as a species. That's my point. But there can't be unlimited growth. There can't be hope for tomorrow. And it was the debate fell apart. I mean, he fell apart completely. Watch the debate. It's like he completely fell apart, right? I mean, once I explained communism is based on vast material abundance, he fell apart completely. And, he wants to debate me on the patriotism thing. Well, first of all, if you want to debate, be nice, number one. Right? I mean, don't make videos, screaming that you want people to, attack me. Maybe, maybe be reasonable. You know what I mean? And number two, like, how could I debate this with him without insulting him on a personal level? Right? I mean, because it's like, at some point, I would just, I don't want to hit people below the belt. I really don't, right? I mean, it's not, you don't look good having a nasty, but that's kind of what people want. People want blood sports. People want nasty personal attacks. I don't like that kind of thing, right? It stresses me out, right? Causes me to lose sleep. I don't want that. I'm interested in communism and socialism because I actually believe in this stuff. I'm not interested in internet blood sports. I'm not interested in trying to prove how woke I am in comparison to other people. I actually believe in these ideas, and I'm trying to get other people to understand them. And a lot of these people aren't. They want points for being woke, right? So, you believe in socialist patriotism? Well, I'm revolutionary. I don't believe in America. Look at me. It's like, I'm tired of this, right? If you want people in the United States to be in favor of socialism, you should convince them that socialism will make their lives better. Pretty basic. But I don't want things to get better in America. These are racist Euro settlers benefiting from the empire. Look at me. Every white person in America is an evil exploiter, and I'm so good for saying that. I don't want to win people. It's childish. It's really, I don't know how to put it in a non-crass way. But it's just juvenile, and it's not real. This is not real politics by any means. It's not real politics. It's not real politics. Trying to performatively on the internet try to outwoke everybody. Attacking any program that people might actually be able to agree on the grounds that it's not as ultra-revolutionary as you are. I mean, it's juvenile, and we need to get beyond this. I want to build a real community. I want to build a real think tank, the Center for Political Innovation, and we're doing it. Right? We have the Saxton lectures. Pretty soon we'll be posting from the Milo conference. We got books. I'm actually working on a new book. I'm working on a new book, folks. I'm always working on a new book, but, it'll be very timely. I'm working on a new book. I mean, it takes me a while to do these things, so I'm not going to say too much about it. But I'm working on a new short book on some current events that are very important. And we're having conferences, and the John Brown volunteers are out in the streets. They're getting ready to go to Texas. The John Brown volunteers are going to be in Texas pretty soon, it looks like. Right now, they're doing great here in the New York City area, but pretty soon they're going to be on the other side of the country doing their stuff and learning to do it in a different environment, functioning in different ways. And we've got more people volunteering that want to step up to be part of the John Brown Volunteers. We've got the Center for Political Innovation. We're doing it. We're trying to actually build something real, something solid, not performance art, something actually solid. That's what we're trying to do. So there you go. And they've got a GoFundMe if you want to help the John Brown Volunteers out. But but there you go. So that's what I got from the patriotism debate. U.S. soldiers in Taiwan. Well, look, the USA. I mean, the USA doesn't recognize the government on Taiwan. It recognizes the Chinese government. It recognizes the People's Republic. But this is a bit of a concern. I mean, the USA is trying to provoke China to retake the island of Taiwan, because then they will be able to use that to isolate China. Right? The game is back China into a corner. Back China into a corner, People's Party. Back China into a corner where they feel like they have to retake Taiwan and then castigate China as the invader. And it's also about putting pressure in the South China Sea. You have to remember that China's oil comes on oil tankers through the South China Sea. And that China is dependent on oil. Some of it comes on pipelines from Russia, but most of it comes on oil tankers from the South China Sea. And because of that, the USA playing games in the South China Sea, escalating its military presence there, all of that is a way the United States can threaten China's oil supply. So there you go. Luna being anti-American. Well, look, I've said it before, I'll say it again. She's in Vietnam, right? And in Vietnam, look, just like every other anti-imperialist country, Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, there's a layer of young people in these countries who are enamored with the United States. And they think, because they have their iPhones, they got Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, they think America is a happy, happy, fun land where everyone's rich and everyone lives like Kim Kardashian and all of that. So for her to be in Vietnam saying that the United States is actually a country founded on genocide and slavery, thank you, Ruben, and that the United States is actually, a country that has committed mass murder of Vietnamese people. And so that's good. That's what people in Vietnam need to hear. There's a lot of people in Vietnam, unfortunately, because of the years of it goes back thousands of years. It's long, far older than the 20th century, but there is a long-standing, a long-standing division between the people of China and the people of Vietnam. There is a lot of pain there. There's a lot of trauma and a lot of ethnic and war for centuries. So, there are some Vietnamese people that, because there are disputed islands, which there are some islands that Vietnam claims are theirs, that China now, says are theirs. There's some disputed islands. And because of that, there are a lot of people in Vietnam who say, look, the Vietnam War was a long time ago. The U.S. government, the USA has pulled out. So maybe we should, just focus on working with the United States against China. So for her to be talking against the United States the way she is in Vietnam, it makes sense. Now, there's another angle of this, which is that she's, virtue signaling to like bread tubers and stuff like that and whatever. And look, again, I wish it didn't have to get into blood sports. I'm seeing a lot of what's being posted about Luna right now. And a lot of it, again, people post all kinds of stuff about me that's not true. People post a whole lot of stuff about me. It's taken out of context. I want to be careful with this character assassination. At the end of the person, right? And again, personalities. The political line that she puts out explaining how Vietnam is socialist, being critical of American capitalism, trying to link people in the United States who are concerned about police brutality and concerned about racism or concerned about workers' rights, linking them with the people of the world that are struggling, and with anti-imperialist countries like Vietnam. Overall, I like the idea of Luna. Luna is good. Now, unfortunately, I guess her husband is very much one of these bread tube anarchists who thinks communism is just worker cooperatives. She blocked me on Twitter. We had a nice conversation, which is up. You can watch our nice conversation. She was very friendly. It was a great conversation. But for some reason, she blocked me on Twitter. I don't know what that's about. And I don't care. I mean, whatever, right? She's just one person. And, that's all there is to it. I mean, look, I wish her the best. I'm sorry that things have come to this. Again, I see a lot of the stuff people are posting. If that's true, there's obviously some big problems there. If it's actually true that she's involved in trying to organize a free trade union in Vietnam, that's a big problem, right? We Google Jay Lovestone. read about the International Federation of Free Trade Unions. That's pretty bad if that's true. If it's true, though, if that's not just like an exaggeration. I don't know, some of the stuff, but I guess she's apologized for some of the stuff that she said in the past about Chinese people or whatever, okay? And she's just one person. Again, politics over personalities, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if you're serious about politics, you may have to sit down and negotiate or cooperate with somebody at the end of the day who's awful. But, in order to look, Trotsky joined the Bolsheviks. Lenin and Trotsky hated each other, but Lenin ultimately let Trotsky join the Bolsheviks in July of 1917 because in order to have the Bolsheviks take power, they needed to build a big coalition, and Trotsky had a lot of followers. And that we should be better than this, right? Again, the goal should not be to disagree. The goal should be to agree. That should be the goal. The goal should be to agree, not to disagree. The goal should not be to find somebody. I swear, these people sit there and they see somebody on the internet and they don't think, oh, where can I agree with this person? They say, oh, where can I disagree with this person and get some points for it? Get over this. Get over this. Get over this. Come on now. Come on now. And, I love Haas, too. Haas is awesome. He's amazing. I've streamed with him multiple times. He's great. Haas is really great. He's got that Hegelian approach. He's definitely, he embraces a lot of the themes that we put out here, like a government of action to fight for working families and the futurism and Fusion City. I love Haas, right? And that's why I wish that, okay, the two of them don't like each other, all right? I wish it didn't have to turn into blood sports, all right? I wish it didn't have to turn into... Things have been said that can never be taken back. Right? That can never be taken back. And it's like, that's awful, right? Bridges, we shouldn't be burning bridges. We should be building them. That's how I think Lily, a friend of mine, put it. She said, we should be building bridges, not burning them. And seriously, right? I mean, there's so few people that are active communists that actually want to do something about communism. Among those people, there are so few of them that are tankies. And so can we, the goal, we should try to at least get along with people, right? Again, the performative politics. Ultimately, we want to get to the masses. And that's why, again, the less we're concerned about trying to please these people on the internet, right, the better, right? At the end of the day, we want to get to the masses. It's about getting to the masses. It's about getting to the masses, the broad masses of people. Out of the movement to the masses. Out of the movement to the masses. Out of the movement to the masses. That has to be the way we look at this, because there's a lot of performative stuff going on, and a lot of, So anyway, we just need to focus on getting to the broad masses of people and building our own organization, the Center for Political Innovation. We need to focus on our own efforts and trying to get to the masses, right? Out of the movement to the masses, tunnel vision, tunnel vision, comrades, tunnel vision, right? It's disappointing to see how this goes down, but the goal should be to build a broad coalition around a program. All right. My favorite Beatles track. I don't encourage people to listen to Beatles music. I wake up every day. My life has gotten so much better since I made the decision to wake up every morning with classical music and go to sleep every morning, every night with classical music. Now, I do listen to non-classical music throughout the day to entertain myself or whatever, but in the morning, classical, in the evening, classical, usually Beethoven in the morning, usually Mozart or Bach when I'm going to sleep at night. And classical music is it clears out the emotion. So I'm not going to encourage you to listen to any Beatles music, right? But if there was one track by the Beatles that I like the most, it would be the closing track of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. The closing track of the album is called A Day in the Life, and I like it. I like that track. It's been a favorite of mine for a long time. Going back for years, that's been a favorite track of mine. I remember my parents had a copy. They had a vinyl record of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And I remember when I was like a teenager, I got kind of interested in rock music, and so I got the vinyl record out, and I would play the actual vinyl record. And I remember, that track, that's a good track. I think. I mean, who knows, right? Who really knows? I mean, you know, it's interesting. I was talking to somebody the other day about the White Album by the Beatles. And it's interesting how much, you know, the White Album by the Beatles is very much, it's like a synthetic left manifesto, right? There's a couple tracks on the White Album, which are, I mean, you know, first of all, the track that you know, it's like asking for it is, you know, the Revolution track that has the dig at Maoists on it, right? And if you go carrying pictures of Chairman Mao, you ain't gonna make it with anyone anyhow, right? You know, that's like a dig at Maoists. It's like the whole song "Revolution" is just an attack on the organized political left. And then on top of that, you know, but then on top of that, there's another track on the White Album. It's called "Piggies," right? Right? You know, and it's basically an attack on the broad masses of people, right? And it's just you know, and this is the Weathermen, right? The Weathermen described, you know, they described the broad masses of people as you know, as if they were quote unquote pigs. The working class of the USA were pigs, right? And the album, I mean, it's the song "Piggies" is a you know, it's like, you know, have you it's an attack on the and the last line of it is like, in their lives there's something lacking, what they need's a damn good whacking. I mean, it's like talking about killing the broad masses of people like they're the enemy. It's like Maoist third worldist stuff. You know, that should be Jason's manifesto, right? That's how he sees the broad masses of people. He doesn't want to lead the broad masses in a revolution, right? He sees them as, you know, and that's, you know, I mean, Charles Manson, right? I mean, that was kind of you know, that was kind of a thing. But it's like, you know, the White Album, you know, you listen to it. I mean, you know, there's the one song "Back in the USSR," right? I think that's the opening track of the White Album. And "Back in the USSR," apparently it was a spoof of, like, you know, Surfing USA, and the, you know, like the Beach Boys, but it was also kind of a reference, like "Back in the USA, Back in the USA," by Chuck Berry. But it was also, apparently it was a reference to an army campaign. There was an army recruiting campaign in Britain called "I'm Backing the UK," like I'm like supporting the UK, I'm backing the UK. So they punned it, they made it "I'm back in the USSR," and you listen to it and it's like, you know, it's, I don't know, you know, it's like, it's kind of like tongue in cheek, right? Because the Soviet Union is supposed to be the enemy, you know, but it's like singing about the Soviet Union the way like Chuck Berry sings about "Back in the USA," you know. I mean, and it's, I mean, you know, you can talk about that's a vague reference to communism or something. You know, there's that final track of the White Album that people talk about where it's got that voice, "number 9, number 9, number 9, number 9." You know, people talk about that track in particular, and that's supposed to show like society disintegrating into mob rule. You can't, I mean, that track does something with your head. I'll tell you, you listen to that track too much, it like does something to your mind. That's like, I mean, it doesn't leave you in a good psychological place. I'll tell you that much, right? It's, you know, and it's like sad sounds and people, I mean, you listen to that, something's wrong there. There's something deeply wrong with that track. Um, I don't know. It's like, you know, the White Album, I actually is a very disturbing piece. I mean, you know, I mean, Sergeant Pepper, you can appreciate, right, some of their other stuff, but the White Album, that's messed up. All right, you listen to the White Album, it's everything that I don't like about the synthetic left, right? It's that dark, pessimistic hopelessness, contempt for the broad masses, sarcasm, you know, the White Album has a particularly, it kind of, you know, it leaves you in this very dark place. You know, yeah, the White Album, if you want to kind of get the essence of the dark, pessimistic tone of the synthetic left, that's, you know, I would, you know, look at the White Album. That's what we're against, right? You know, White Album that is the Beatles at their worst. That is everything that about the Beatles that just makes you want to go. That's the White Album, right? Sergeant Pepper is a lot of fun to listen to. I'll give you that. I really like the last track especially, and the opening too. Like the opening 3 or 4 songs, they flow really well and all of that. But yeah, that White Album, just, you know, There's a song like "Cry Baby Cry." It's about like summoning evil spirits, right? If you listen to it, it's like, what is it? you know, um, they're having a séance in the dark, and I mean, it's really a dark, it's like about it sounds like a nice song about children, but all of a sudden they're talking to like dead spirits or something. It's like that's very eerie, and yeah, the White Album, and funny, it's not actually called the White Album, right? I mean, it's funny story about this. Again, when I was in high school, I read way too much about the Beatles and stuff, but it's not actually called the White Album, just FYI. Um, it was actually called the Beatles. They didn't give it a title. It was just the Beatles. And originally it wasn't white. It was supposed to have John Lennon and Yoko Ono naked on the cover, if I remember correctly. They were supposed to be naked, and it was just the Beatles, and it was going to have John and Yoko naked, and then the record companies, the distributors were like, yeah, we're not going to distribute naked people, right? Children come into these stores. It's indecent. We can't do that. And so because of that, they made it white as like a protest. There you go. But yeah. I mean, there you go. I mean, it's interesting to think about. Like John Lennon himself, he flirted with communist groups. He gave an interview to Tariq Ali. Um, Tariq Ali was kind of a Trotskyite journalist in Britain at the time, and he gave money to the Workers' Revolutionary Party, which was this like group that supported Gaddafi. They were Trotskyites who supported Gaddafi. They were led by Jerry Healy. He also gave some money to the Black Panthers. So, it's complicated. I mean, the Beatles are an interesting group. Politically, John Lennon was the one who was probably the most sympathetic to communism. George Harrison joined the Hare Krishna movement. Like he joined Hare Krishna, which is a form of fundamentalist Hinduism, right? He became a fundamentalist Hindu. And I mean, the people who believe that it's like most Hindus are polytheistic, right? Meaning they believe in multiple gods. But Hare Krishna, they are folks who believe that there is one God, right, and that all the other gods are just representations of that God, and all the gods that exist are just representations of Krishna, and the most holy thing that one can do is chant the name of God all the time, right? And so the Hare Krishnas, they just chant the name of God all the time, and yeah, I mean, it's one of these CIA-linked religious cults. That was in India. They were there and in India, they're considered the right wing. In India, everyone knows the Hare Krishnas are the most right-wing people. They're like extremist Hindu nationalists who, kill Muslims and believe in child marriage and, the caste system. They're not good folks. But because it's Eastern, man, and they like chant stuff and they like play drums, man, they're considered like left wing in the United States. And they recruited George Harrison to be one of them, actually. That's kind of interesting. And that was part of the whole, again, American intelligence, British intelligence, pushing the mystical Eastern cults. And George Harrison, he was one of them. And I mean, every album that he does, I mean, his last album that came out after he died, he had an album called Brainwashed, and it's like the middle of the song, in the middle of the song, the song stops, and it's like it's singing about Shiva, and it's Hinduism, right? It's fundamentalist Hinduism. So, what do you think of shoplifting from big stores that use prison labor and control our government? I shoplifted Johnny Craft's greatest hits from Walmart, partly because of the song One Piece at a Time. Well, Mr. Texan White Panther, I oppose all illegal activity, and I would never encourage anyone to engage in anything illegal on my live streams, because that would be a big problem if I were doing that. So if you're asking me, what do I think of people doing illegal things, I am opposed to it. I advocate that people engage in legal struggle, not illegal activity. And, you should think about why you're asking me on my stream if I advocate illegal activity, because I don't think that's a very wise question to ask me on a stream like this, because, again, I advocate legal activity, not illegal activity. I oppose left adventurism. I oppose anything. I'm not encouraging people to break the law. So please, I would ask you to not ask me questions like that, where it's like bait, it sounds like, right? Like, that's bait, right? And again, so now I mean, is that going to be taken out of context? And is it going to say, oh, Caleb doesn't support people? Yeah, I mean, look, again, I would never encourage anyone to do anything illegal on one of my streams. So please don't send me questions that look like they're bait, because that doesn't help. Doesn't help me, doesn't help you, right? Ask me real questions. Don't ask me about that. And also, why would you confess to committing a crime in a super chat? I mean, seriously, if you actually did that, why would you tell me you did that? You just confessed online. You think the government can't figure out who you are, Mr. Texan White Panther? I mean, so don't send me super chats admitting you did something illegal, right? I mean, I'm not your attorney. I'm not giving legal advice, but I mean, I hope that you're lying. I hope that was just like a boast, but like, come on, man. Come on, man. I assume it was a long time ago, statute of limitations or whatever, but like, come on, man. Seriously. Like, and then like, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to like get that and be like, oh yeah, go steal stuff, right? And then what happens to me? You think that looks good for me? I mean, come on, man. Come on, man. I will say, shoplifting is a phase most kids go through, right? I never went through that phase. And, I don't know. I guess maybe there's part of me that's just, right? I don't know. I'm just, what is it? I'm just so much of like a rule follower kind of person. I just never went through that phase. I never went through the shoplifting phase. So, but there you go. There you go. But maybe I did. Maybe I just don't remember it, right? I think maybe some kids go through it when they're really little, so maybe I did and I just don't remember it. But, I don't recall that. I mean, I heard later that, yeah, when kids are growing up, they take the candy from the store, their parent catches them, makes them put it back and says, don't steal, young man, or, puts them in timeout or whatever. It's like a normal thing that kids could do. And especially a lot of teenagers go through a shoplifting phase, apparently. I certainly didn't do that when I was a teenager. I don't recall doing it when I was a small child, but it's a thing that when young people are coming up in the world, Joe Biden impression, when young people are coming up in the world, they try to figure out where the rules are, right? And the rules change as you get older, right? The expectations society has for a small child, as for a teenager and as for an adult is very different. So in a way, you're always kind of experimenting with where the rules are. How far can I push things? There's a lot of unwritten rules that you're expected to follow, even though they're not written down. And there's a lot of rules that nominally exist that aren't enforced, right? I mean, that's something. I mean, every job I've ever had, there's been a dress code, and I always read the dress code, and it has nothing to do with what the rules are, right? There's all kinds of stuff that is written down in that dress code everywhere I've ever worked that it's not enforced, and there's all kinds of stuff that is enforced about the dress code. It's not written down, right? I think my school's dress code, it said you couldn't wear clogs to school because they made too much noise walking up and down the hallway. Well, we never had that problem. No one ever wore clogs to school. So there you go. And in fact, it's funny because I read the dress code at my school. I remember this. I read the student handbook many times because I was bored in study hall. And I remember that the dress code actually said, like, it said that you couldn't wear sandals, you couldn't wear clogs, shirts should be tucked in. They didn't enforce the shirts being tucked in thing. Every time we had a dress code crackdown, it was always about girls revealing themselves too much and guys sagging, right? They didn't like guys' pants sagging and seeing underwear. They didn't think that was cool. And they didn't like, girls revealing too much, right? That's what the dress code crackdowns were always about. And that was definitely not from in the handbook. And that always annoyed me. I'm always the type of person that says, if you're going to make a rule, write it down and enforce it. And if you're not going to have a rule, don't write it down and don't enforce it. But, I don't like this, but because the world is like this, because there are so many unwritten rules, right? There are so many rules that are not written down that are enforced, and so many rules that are enforced that you don't really have to follow. A lot of people spend their life kind of, even as an adult, right? You kind of have to figure out, okay, what is really the rule and what isn't, you kind of have to do that. So, the fact that children and teenagers, right? I mean, small little kids and then teenagers, both are known to have a shoplifting phase, which I never had, right? But maybe I did, or maybe I'm just not saying it on here because I don't want to implicate myself. But I'm being honest with you. I don't recall ever having that phase. I've done bad things in my life before. I certainly got in trouble and misbehaved as a child, no question about it. But you know, I was suspended from school, and no, you know, I mean, you know, trust me, I've got street cred. Don't worry. But no, but you know, I mean, you know, the fact that it's common for very small children to take the candy in the store, and their parent, you know, smacks their hand and makes them give it back or whatever. And it's also common for teenagers, right? It's common for teenagers to, you know, to go through a phase where they, right, they decide they're going to start stealing clothes or stealing books, and then they get caught, or they don't get caught, but they get over it or whatever. I mean, you know, it shouldn't be surprising because, again, part of life is trying to figure out, you know, trying to figure out where the boundaries really are, right? There you go. There you go. All right. I don't know how that came out of the Beatles track, but there you go. Land back versus land reform. Well, look, again, right? The definition of land back changes 6 times in every argument I ever have, right? And if land back means indigenous groups get some territory and they can separate with that territory, or they can choose not to and they get some reparations, I'm for it. I don't have a problem with that. I think that's basic. That's what any Marxist would be for, right? The right of self-determination for oppressed people. Sure. If land back means every person in the United States who is not indigenous needs to leave because this is stolen land, and you're not allowed to be a socialist patriot, and you're not allowed to want a government of action fight for working families because everyone here's an evil, rotten Euro, the Jason Unruhe definition of land back, I'm against it. If land back means this like liberal policy program that Jeff Bezos donated $12 million to, that means privatizing public lands, I'm against it. So, I mean, you have to decide what it is, right? You know, I would imagine that a socialist government in the United States would, on the one hand, you would want to nationalize big agribusiness and have like, state-run mega farms, but you would probably also want to start farm cooperatives, right? And you may even want to experiment with individual farms, right? That I think the agricultural sector, just like the, you know, the industrial sector, you would have, and the service sector, right? You would have some state enterprises, you'd have some cooperative enterprises, and even some private enterprises. I think there might be a place for family farms in a socialist society in the United States, just like there would be room for cooperative or collective farms, and there would also be a room for state, you know, mega farms, right? And that, you know, that determining what was in the interest of socialism in doing that, it's really capitalism that has gotten rid of family farms in the United States. There are nowhere near anywhere as many family farms as there once were, and that's because of capitalism, right? American agribusiness. And American agribusiness, you know, we always talk about oil. We always talk about oil being a big part of U.S. imperialism and such, but, I mean, corn, agribusiness, agricultural markets, that's a big part of it. I mean, you know, NAFTA, that was really all about, you know, big agriculture, right? I mean, Mexico, folks in Mexico have been growing their own food since thousands of years before Columbus. You know, I have no idea. Tahitian fire. I don't know that detail. But you know, they've been growing their own food for thousands of years before Christopher Columbus, and you know, yet with NAFTA, their domestic agricultural market was destroyed, and they import all their food from the United States. Haiti, same story. They used to have a lot of farming in Haiti, and you know, there's high fructose corn syrup in everything in the United States. It's not necessary. There are other forms of sweetener out there, but because it's made from corn, which grows in the United States, which is something that American agribusiness has in abundance, high fructose corn syrup is in everything. And this is capitalism, right? This is American imperialism. Part of the way they do it is with the domination of the agricultural markets. You wouldn't know that, right? Again, these are things that are again, you know, don't get talked about, but that's part of neoliberalism, has been the domination of agribusiness. So there you go, right? And that's where people, you know, people talk about preservatives in food that are not good. People talk about the use of the use of what is it? There's like hormones and like what do they call it? Oh, geez, what do they call it? It's the pesticides, and there's a lot going on there, right? And Monsanto, I don't trust Monsanto. I'm not against. Let me make this clear. And again, if you're a Marxist, you can't be against genetically modified foods, right? You can not trust Monsanto, but you can't say that the concept of genetically modified food is bad. Hypothetically, genetically modified foods might be good. I just don't trust Monsanto. I think Monsanto is a lying corporation. I don't trust the capitalists to do honest research about my health. So I have concerns about genetically modified foods, but I'm not against them. And same with nuclear power, right? I'm not against nuclear power. I don't trust American power companies and how to do it. And I don't, but the concept of nuclear power, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with genetically modified foods. It's a matter of, it should be under public control, right? Under socialism, genetically modified foods could be great, right? And under capitalism, they're not necessarily bad. I'm open to some of the criticism of it, but at the same time, the idea when people start saying that there's something inherently evil about GMOs, that's not Marxism. When people start saying there's something inherently evil about nuclear energy, that's not Marxism. People say we shouldn't trust the American military corporations and the way they run nuclear power. Okay, right? We need more oversight. That's fair. And people say we shouldn't trust Monsanto. Again, that's fair. But when people start saying, oh, we can't play God, no. You're not talking about Marxism then. Marxism is in favor of historical progress. One thing all communists must agree on. Tushar, I want to answer your question. I really do. But it's like one thing that all must agree on. I think part of what makes Marxism so important is the tradition of the polemic. The fact that we don't agree. The fact that there is vibrant discourse. There are certain principles that I, identify with Marxism. But at the same time, the fact, that we disagree with each other and we learn through those disagreements. Historical progress is a big one for me. That is so central to what I believe. If you don't believe in historical progress, I guess if there was one thing that was really, really, really important to me, Tushar, it would be historical progress. And I feel like it's hard to have a conversation with people who don't believe in historical progress. But that said, I would try if I met somebody. And if somebody could agree with me on the basis of the program, right? They agreed with a communist program, they just rejected belief in historical progress, I would try to find a way to work with them. I tend to want to work with people I disagree with, and I tend to think that it's through disagreements, that we can often learn, right? That's the polemic. So there you go. The People's Party, I think it's great. I think it's awesome. The fact that, there's, an attempt to break with the Democratic Party and form a more, socialist or social democratic, working class, alternative to the Democratic Party. What could be wrong with that, right? I hope that it turns into a real alternative to the Democratic Party, but it might not, right? It might not. It's certainly not the first time someone's tried something like this, but this time they've got big names like Cornel West and Jimmy Dore associated with it, so let's hope. What happened at the Democratic Convention in 2016 when the Bernie people actually fought, and that was big. That was a big moment, right? I remember for years, I think it was David Cobb, who was one of the Green Party guys, would always say that, the Democratic primary is where genuine progressive politics goes to die. Well, 2016, there was an actual fight. It was like, and even Bernie was telling his supporters to just vote for Hillary Clinton, but there was an actual, no, his supporters were angry. They felt it was rigged, and that was big. That was big. That kind of thing hasn't happened before, right? That's something that, again, the script is usually there's somebody like Dennis Kucinich or Mike Gravel or Al Sharpton or somebody, and they run and they lose, and then they tell you to vote for the Democrats, and you vote for Joe Biden or John Kerry or Barack Obama, and that's the end of it. But what happened with Bernie, that wasn't the script. That was a completely new thing. It doesn't happen that way, and that showed that there are divisions in the ruling class, and that was important. And I was really glad I was at that convention. I was in Philadelphia in 2016. So there you go. Joe Biden. They want me to do an impression of Joe Biden. Man, I'm Joe Biden. I'm tired. we gotta wear a mask. Just wear a mask. Just wear a mask. I don't know. Joe Biden. Hey, man. Right. Yeah, yeah. Joe Biden. Joe Biden. Any other questions people have? This has been a strange stream, but that's okay. Not every stream is the same, right? I think last Thursday I was on here giving you a big screaming sermon about how to be happy, and then, another time I was on here talking about movies. I just went over movies I liked, and here I had a very short opening remark about the tavistock thing and what it means and what it doesn't mean, and now I'm answering your super chats, and I guess if there's not anything further, we can just kind of wrap it up. That corn pop was a bad dude. He hung out with some bad boys. Yeah, yeah. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, hey, we talked a lot about the Beatles tonight, which is interesting because I started out by talking about the tavistock thing and like kind of negative on the Beatles, but then we ended up talking about the Beatles for a really long time. So there you go. There you go. So yeah, I guess that was our stream for tonight. Started pretty late. Didn't go on forever, but we did a good hour and 20 minutes here, and that's important, right? We got to do it. We'll be back. We'll be back. We will be back. I think we'll be back tomorrow. We'll probably be back the next day and the next day. Right? Right? We're gonna get some streams in here. I've been tired lately. It's like the season changes. October. I've been weary, and I try to work out. I try to stay on top of my schedule. Lately, I've just been, it's those fall allergies and stuff. But I had some energy here. I didn't have to stream tonight, but I thought, it's 11:30, and I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. So I did it. And we'll be back. We'll be back. We want to be on here regularly. We're a great community. We are a really awesome community on these streams. We really are. We really are a great community. We care about each other. We're building in real life connections, a real think tank, real study groups, John Brown volunteers. We care about each other, and we're just going to keep going, right? The algorithms aren't shilling for us. They don't want people to come here and find out how amazing we are, but people keep coming in. People keep trickling in. And we're going to keep going. We are just going to keep going. So we're going to keep doing the best we can. Stay strong, everybody. A new upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. While the danger of a new world war still exists and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. While the danger of a new world war still exists and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.